So, uh, in addition to what I presented in the other videos talking about equilibrium, I wanted to kind of look at another way to do this, which relates to one of the homework problems, which is, when you first read it, is likely to throw you off. So in my ordered list of problems, I'm referring to number 8. And number 8 is using terms that's going to cause you to have to think about what it is that's going on a little bit harder than in some of the other questions. So let me redraw a demand and supply curve. So here's supply and here's demand. And so we know that here's the equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium price. Now, in my previous examples, I was moving the price around to show us how we adjust equilibrium and talking about shortages and surpluses. Now, another way that we could think about this is to notice where the quantities are off, right? So let's say that, Q star is 50, and over here the quantity is 25. And then I want to compare or look at what do I know when the quantity is 25 in this example. There's a couple of key concepts that I'm trying to get at in this question in order to help you understand those more thoroughly. So I want you to remember, what does the demand curve tell me? The demand curve tells me willingness to pay. Right? That was my marginal benefit of buying another good, is going to be my willingness to pay. Right? The supply curve tells me willingness to accept. Right? So when the quantity is 25, below the equilibrium quantity, I know that the willingness to accept from supply is lower than the willingness to pay in demand. Right? So the willingness to accept in this example might be, let's say, $5. Right? If the quantity is 25, if you want to convince someone to supply 25 units of this good to the marketplace, the lowest amount they're willing to accept to do that is $5. That's their willingness to accept or willingness to supply. At that same quantity, the marginal benefit or willingness to pay is much higher. Let's say that's $10, right? So I can be given this information in a lot of different ways. So I might tell you, when the quantity is 25, willingness to pay is 10, willingness to accept is 5. At Q equal to 25, willingness to pay is $10. Willingness to accept is $5, right? What do I know about that? Well, I've got to kind of draw my demand and supply curve and figure out where relative to equilibrium would it be if willingness to pay is higher than willingness to accept in this example, right? Now, I could give you one hint where we're over on the other side, right? And then I have to think harder about when is willingness to accept higher than willingness to pay. But in this example, what I would know, if I didn't know exactly what this equilibrium quantity is, I do know that the equilibrium quantity has to be higher than 25. And I know that because willingness to pay is higher than willingness to accept, right? And I'm only in equilibrium when those two are exactly equal. Consumers are willing to pay exactly what the market price is for that last quantity. Sellers are willing to accept the exact market price for that exact equilibrium quantity. Okay, so it's kind of a good question because it forces me to remember what is demand and what is supply, and then kind of work out how exactly that's going to work. What information do I have, and how can I make use of that information to analyze my way through the problem? All right, so a good application of the economic way of thinking to think my way out of a problem or to find a solution.